I'll just move this across onto the other screen. So now you can see my DreamWeaver, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we've got in this corner here, is that flashing up, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. That's like your file inspector, but it works slightly differently to a normal file inspector, because that's where you create a site definition, so it can be set up on a computer, a bit like a remote website. So you designate a folder that you're going to work in, and then it monitors that folder, so you can only see that, and the folders within it and the files within it. So the first thing you usually do is to choose create DreamWeaver site there. And you create a new site, so like, for instance, it could be IMDP portfolio, or WBPF portfolio, whatever it is. So this module isn't WBPF portfolio. And you can either find the folder that exists, or you can just create one by writing the name in there. So it's like, okay, find a folder. I've got one there called portfolio. Open that, select that one, and then save. There's other things we'll do at a later point, like we'll go into servers and we'll set up a server so you can upload it to the web. But for now, it's just working locally. Okay. So that means whenever you create a new document, it will automatically save into that area. Target that area. Hi, anyway. Should be, but it's running a bit late. Yeah, so the next thing to make sure, as I think I did with you anyway in the first place, was to make sure that in your preferences, your new document is set to the following: HTML, HTML5, Unicode, UTF-8, and done. So a HTML document, when you're in DreamWeaver, you've got the design view, which mimics a browser. I don't usually rely on that too much, but you can use it in a drag and drop way. So you can type information into that window. So like, I could say my portfolio. I can have maybe a series of things that are going to be linked at some point. So it could be, about, work, contacts, or something like that. And then maybe you could have an image and some text. And across to the right-hand side, you've got an insert tab, which allows you to work in that way. So I can insert like images, I can insert boxes like div tags, which we use to position things around the page. When you look at the split view, it will show you the code underneath that. So at the moment, all I've put in there is 2 pieces of text, and they're marked up with the tag P/P. So that starts the paragraph, and that ends the paragraph, and again, there and there. And what happened here is, because I pressed return, it created a new paragraph ready, and that's just a code for a space. It doesn't need a code for a space, HTML, unless you're putting in more than one space. So it expects spaces in sentences, but when you start trying to add in extra spaces, then it starts to ignore them. So this is a basic HTML5 document. You've got the document type, which declares the type of document it is. We know that it's a HTML5 file because this is what it says. It's a very simple and straightforward declaration. Doc type HTML. That's the first tag that states that this is the start of the HTML, which is paired by the closing of HTML at the end of the document. We've got a head section here, and that's where meta content goes, usually things like author, meta description, maybe keywords about a page. You can also put script in there, and you can also put style in there. So the way that everything looks is done in a CSS file, or it can be in there just coded. Tend to work in separate files because it keeps everything nice, neat, and tidy, as opposed to having one massive document with everything in, which you can also work like that. It gets confusing after a while. So you'll notice in there, currently the metadata tells you the character set, which basically means you can get access to any Latin language character set at the very least. untitled document there. So I could put that that's my portfolio. About your title should be unique to each page, because each page in its own right is its own document and should be treated that way. And then other things you may be getting there, like I say, the CSS and the script. So working in design view, you can do things like change the format. I can change that to heading 1. I can make links of this. So for example, I just put link contact.html, which would link to a file called contact.html. It doesn't exist there. However, another way of doing that, if I save this twice, just as an example, I'll save it as index. Every website has to have an index page, otherwise it shows the folder structure. Well, by default it would, depends on your security settings. So what you want people to see when they visit a website is your web pages and not to see your underlying architecture. So index would display normally as your first page. If you go to a domain and you don't put anything else in, just the domain name, .co.uk or .com, it will take you to the index of that folder. And you see there it's put some markup in again. This is the A tag, which opens there, closes there, and it's got an attribute of href, which is used to give it a link. So you can type that in, like so, but you can also, like I say, just type it in link. If I was to save this as contact as well, just to show you quickly. You'll see that they're both in that folder now. Sometimes you have to press F5 to refresh it. So that's my website. Currently, I've got 2 HTML documents. So if I just go back to this contact link here that I've created, I'll delete the path. I can use this little selector here, point to file, find a file in my website, say for instance that one, and it'll just link straight to that, which is quite a useful way of working. When I'm ready to look at it in a browser, just click on the world up there, preview in Chrome, and there we go. It's pretty basic stuff to start off with. So we've got my portfolio and then some links. Normally, just show that on the screen. There we go. Normally, if I've got a lot of links, what I would do is, rather than having them in a paragraph, I would have them in something known as a nav. It's about using descriptive markup. Nav, short for navigation, so therefore it means menu, really. Other things that I would use, article. And inside of article, section. Notice how it's putting that in for me whenever I put a forward slash in. So that's why I like to work in the code view. To be honest, it does a lot of code hinting, and you have access to a lot more HTML than you would do through the drag and drop. The drag and drop's a bit clunky, to be honest. Other meaningful stuff that you'd put in there, you probably have a footer. You probably have a header. So I might have that in there for now. Okay. Save that. Won't look any different. Link to that work. .html. Got one? Oh, I didn't press return, did I? So you can quite quickly build up links, heading, images. A website looks very basic until you start adding the CSS. That's to be fair. And that's pretty much as complex as your HTML needs to be. I mean, it becomes more complex as you put more words in it and you put more images in it. It looks more complex, but the structure is exactly going to be along them lines. I tend to put returns in. So that I can space things out and see it better myself. It makes life a bit easier. So everything in between the body tags, from here to there, is visible, always visible. So some of the other stuff that we were working on was to do with CSS. So I would normally, in my website, have folders for different things, either IMG or images, for images. Folder for my CSS, because quite often you'll have more than one style sheet, especially for different purposes. You might have one for mobile, one for bigger screen. If you're working with things like SVG, you might have separate style sheets for that. Oops, try that again. And sometimes one for includes or JavaScript, however you want to put it, sometimes one for PHP. It's best to keep things separate. So in your root folder, all you really want are your HTML files that are going to be seen. And you can structure it as just a page, and just link to those pages. You can also structure it where you've just got one big page that everything's contained within, and just style it to look like it's different pages. That's another way of doing it. So the next main thing to get involved with would be the CSS side of things. So I would create a new CSS file. So it's new, find the file type CSS, and create. That just puts in a bit about the character set again. I'm going to save this as, and put it in my CSS, and I will just call it main, because it's the main CSS file. I'm going to close it down because DreamWeaver does this great thing where once you've inserted something, so file, insert, where's head? Actually, it might be easier to do it from here. Oh, there we go. Insert a link, find the file. It's already pointing towards it, thank God. And the relationship is style sheet. It puts that in for me. Click in here, you'll notice then that that's changed at the top. Just because I've changed the view, it updates the file. So now I can see both files in the same place under their own little tabs, which is quite a useful way to work. Once you're working like that, though, you need to start file and save all when you're testing your pages. So the CSS, I'll show you two ways of accessing properties. You can access tags. So let's say, for example, I want to access the body tag. That's the main one. You usually set things like your typefaces, your colors for your fonts in that one. You maybe set your document size as well. And it's one of the easiest ones to access. So body, curly brackets, and then I give it some information. So I'll give it a background color, just so you can see it. They're not too offensive, I guess. There we go. I close that rule up with another curly bracket, save all, and I'm just going to test that page now. You notice the background color's changed. Put something else in, I can actually set the width, which is weird to set the width of the document, but I could set it to say 90%, or I could set a specific pixel value. won't notice a difference until set the margin to auto, and then it knocks it in a bit. It's more obvious if I change the size down a lot. So say for instance I make it 600 pixels for a very small screen. What it's doing there, maybe I'll put a border on it so we can see. You can see it's put a border around it now. That shows you that I've made the body smaller, and the rest of this just resizes based on that box. So let's drag this over. Notice how that gap it's actually usually a bit more fluid than that. That could just be my computer. So that's one way of creating a slightly fluid layout. And the other way you would access properties is through something's ID. So I need to create an ID before I do this, but let's say I give my nav the ID of main menu, and then I access that through main menu using the hash. So I might just give that a background color as well. So and change the font family just so it looks a bit weird and different, so you can see the difference. And notice how it's changed that to a grey bar with a slightly different typeface. If I zoom in, yeah. So it's just little things like that. Using background images, using images, all of a sudden it comes together once you start. So you really need like to have a plan based on you looking at other websites and deciding what you'd like it to look like, and then we'll just figure out how achievable it is. But do a little bit of practice with this first off. So that is how you select an ID. That's how you select a tag. There is one other, which is to select a class. So I could say, for instance, red. Set the color as red, which you can also use named color values. There's so many different ways of accessing colors. You can do named color values. You can do a hex, which is like what we've got there, which is a hexadecimal value. You can also do RGB and RGBA. RGB, red, green, blue. RGBA, red, green, blue, alpha. So it allows you to change the transparency as well. So if I then apply that to some specific text, I can do it in the design view, for example, and maybe apply the class to that bit there and that bit there. Classes are reusable. IDs can only be used once. Tags are obviously access all tags within a document that have that type. So you can access paragraphs and tell paragraphs that they're all like that. You can also access tags within something. So if I was to go back to the CSS file, and instead of targeting the class red, I could target main menu, not red. Notice how it only targets that one instance there. So you've got this way of, you can target things within things directly by building up something like that. So it could be like main menu, P, and then maybe a class within that, so that you can style things differently around the page. You can have individual style sheets for different pages if there's things you want to change to. And because of the nature of it, it cascades. There's a hierarchy. So you've got an external document, that gets read first, that gets applied. You get internal styles, which can override those external styles. So you can put little bits and pieces in the HTML document itself. So for instance, I just want to change that bit to be a slightly little bit bigger because it's something that's breaking it. Or you might even have inline where you do it actually in the tag, and that overrides that. Okay.